Excellent. As long as I am loud and clear. I'll do my best not to cough this time. Things have gotten better in that vein, so that's good. Oh, it's weird, right? So it should be, just call it There and Back Again with Orion. That's fine for right now. Yes, good morning, good evening, good day. It's a day. It's a... Je peux français un peu. Un peu. Just un peu. Uh, it's been a while since I've actually spoken French. So I would not be able to do this entire thing in French. So this past week, I did an interview with Bloodborne. And there's a lot of consternation that seems to have come out of that regarding one of the things that I mentioned, which was a level scaling. And there's a lot of misconception about it. There's a lot of confusion about it. And I wanted to kind of clear the air and make sure that everyone understands exactly what we're talking about here. We are not in any way, shape, or form looking at the 150 levels that currently exist and looking at trying to bring them down or lower them at all. We're going to keep that right where it is at this point. There's no intention right now to actually make any adjustments there. So we're still going to keep the levels 1 to 150. There is no intent to make it so that when you walk into a zone, the zone automatically looks at your level and sets all the monsters to that level. That is not the type of scaling that we're talking about. It is not... that is not something that we think would make sense for our game. It doesn't make sense, we don't think, for our player base and the way that that everything has worked inside of Lotro since its inception. The thing that I have consistently stated time and again is that I am all about player agency. The more agency that we can provide our players, the more that the players actually have control over what they're doing, the things that they choose to do, the better that we feel the game is for them. With that stated, what we're looking at from this standpoint is making it an optional system that you can engage with if you so choose to set your level downward. And the reason that we're doing this, or the reason that we're entertaining this, is manifold, right? The main reason that we would consider doing something like this is to make the game more accessible for elder players and newer players. So we have a large contingent of our players who use the Stone of the Tortoise, right? So the Stone of the Tortoise is one of those things that slows down the rate at which you gain experience so that you don't actually outlevel the zones that you're traveling in. So you can actually stay in those places for longer and experience them the way that they're supposed to be experienced on level. We also have the notion of, or actually we also have it's not really a problem, but we also have an issue where as a new player who wanders into the game, you look at 150 levels and you see that the 1 to 50 experience takes about, 5 to 10-ish days, depending on how much time you're putting into it. And you realize, oh, this is going to take me a very long time. And you may want to play with your friends. And when you're trying to play with your friends, you're not really able to do so because you're going to make all that content that they're playing completely trivial if you're a higher level player or an elder player. So you have to either make an alt to go back and play that, or you just bite the bullet and go and play with them at the higher level. So what we're trying to do is come up with a happy medium where if you wanted to go back and play different areas of the game at a lower level or on level, you can do that. You can opt into that option. Or if you're trying to assist one of your friends who you're trying to bring into the game, or new members of a kinship, for example, you could down level and travel with them for a while. So this is something that has been very near to a few of us, near and dear to a few of us on the team, and it's something that we're now exploring to see if we can get in and adjust so that we can provide that experience to all of the players. Yes, it would be everywhere, Albini. It would be if you're doing instances, if you're doing landscape, if you're doing raids, you could downscale to that if that's what you wanted to do. We're working on it now to see if we can get the prototype up and running and turn it into something that is available, hopefully, before or around the time that we actually would get the expansion out. So, that was what I wanted to clear the air with to open the show today, because I wanted to make sure that everyone understands that we're not planning to wipe out the way that you currently advance through the game, and we're not trying to turn it into a flat game where there's no where everything is scaled to whatever current level you are. So the overall goal for today's stream is to answer questions, because I'm sure that there are questions out there. And while we just released U39 and things are moving along fairly smoothly, I'm sure that there are some questions and curiosities about what we're doing, where we're going next, and how things have actually gone with U39. I will say that the reaction to U39 has been pretty much what I expected. I think that it's going pretty well, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the higher tiers of the raid actually go once they get out there. So now I'll start looking at the actual stream chat and see what's going on. There's a question about the new launcher. The new launcher, I don't recall exactly when that is planned at this point. I know that we're still working on it. There are other things that are lined up in front of it from a technical standpoint that we're trying to address. The biggest one is obviously the work that we just put up on Furor this week, and that is the new server pinning tech that we've actually implemented, which is going to allow us the ability to move specific servers. And I'm sorry, I have my phone on. Allow us to actually move specific areas of the game world onto dedicated servers so that they aren't as impactful to other areas of the game. The objective there is to try to mitigate some of the latency issues that we've had over the years, because we've identified some areas of the world that are more egregious than others and have been causing some of the more difficult, some of the higher impact lag and latency issues that we've been seeing. So there's a question also about what we just discussed in the level scaling, downscaling, whatever you want to call it. We'll come up with a fancy name that'll make sense. But there is a question about would it be... Oh, I already answered that. It was Old Benny's. All right, so let's look at the next one. So this is from Shoes. The LI grind really puts a hindrance on getting multiple characters raid ready for higher tiers. Are you looking at changing that? So this came up with Bloodborne. And the answer is not an easy one. There is a needle that needs to be thread, right? We need to find something and find a way to address a couple of things. Allies are one, virtues are another, and obviously just the level banding itself is another thing that we need to look at. We're addressing the level banding right now, right, in the work that we're trying to do to figure out if we can actually get the level scaling stuff to work the way that we want it to, and if it actually is a successful and viable way to integrate into the game, something that actually is enjoyed and played through by the players. So that's kind of part one of this. Part two is looking to the future and seeing how we can alleviate some of the difficulty, because what we're seeing more and more, certainly from our top end players, this isn't necessarily something that exists for those who aren't really, screaming to the top of the game and trying to get through the raids and whatnot. But our top end players, those players who've been with us for a while, who actually enjoy this type of play, are definitely seeing it, are seeing a drop off in their ability to keep up or to match what they would need in order to be able to participate in those different spaces, right? So in raid spaces or in high-end instance spaces, because you do need to have multiple sets of allies to satisfy whatever class and particular build you're running at any given time. And sometimes you have even multiples. It is not an easily solved problem, but it is one that, yes, we are looking at and one that we are hoping to have a solution for, not necessarily in the near future, but at some point in the future. So yes, we are looking at it. Would you retain the XP gains from those zones? So that's an open question right now as to how that would be parsed, and how that would be passed on to the character who is downscaled. The immediate thought is that we would probably have to institute some other methodology for getting them, getting that XP back to the character, and it would not necessarily be the same way that you earn it while you're in that space now. So that's an open question that we're still looking at and trying to figure out exactly how we'd handle. I need to cough, so I'm going to go on mute a second. Damn allergies. All right. Another question here. When is Tier 4 going to release? Tier 4, I believe, is planned for next week at this point of the raid. It was mentioned when I was talking to Bloodborne the other day. A system like Epic Battles Upscale, could your level be applied? Would you consider making downscaling to be set by the leveling region? Or would it be a more fellowship determined pick your own level? So we're probably not going to do a pick your own level. There would be an option. And those options would likely be, and the way we're discussing them now, is to look at both the fellowship or the region that you're in. But everything is still up in the air as to how it's going to actually play out. We're just trying to determine exactly where it ends up. Is there any new info that I can offer about the hobby? I will give you the same roughly hints that I provided on Bloodborne. That's one. And then the other one is more just booky. Being more engaged in book or learning or knowledge. Things like that. Again, the launcher's still in works. How is it going with locked characters on closed servers? I honestly don't have any information on that. Not my bailiwick. It's not something that I do. It's not something that I can actually answer. I apologize. Is there anything that you can do about people camping in the relic room in the moors or the freeps when your group opens the door, another person logs in and grabs the relic and then logs out or stands there to hold onto it? It happens on Brandywine a lot because a freep can't kill the freep. Freeps will never really be able to kill freeps. That's not something we can allow. In terms of if someone logs off, then yeah, I've been looking at ways that we can kind of mitigate some of the fringe cases that are out there for that. So that is something that I can look into, but it's not a top of the list item. Oh, you mean I think you mean the background. I don't think you mean the green screen. The green screen is just kind of there. That's just standard. The ring is just something I think that we have internally. So we use that. All 13 areas of the moors pinned in B are just a few. Oh, yeah. So the pinning tech right now, the entirety of the Etten Moors is actually on the pinned server. So is Minas Tirith pre-wedding. No, not pre-wedding. Whatever it is. But yes, there's Minas Tirith is on there along with the Etten Moors. So both of those are actually removed from the general servers that players can migrate to. Those are static. They won't be moving off of there. And in the upcoming bull roar that we have for the first U40 content tests or content release will be another time for us to test that, and we're actually going to be requesting that more people log in because we want to make sure that the tech is working and that it actually does have an impact on the overall game, and also to see exactly how well it is doing to hold what we're attempting to do with it, right? By keeping those servers from affecting or impinging on any of the created instance spaces, whether they be raids or instances or just people who are actually meandering around the world. We want to make sure that this is actually something that's addressing some of the core latency issues, and at least get the feedback on it to see exactly what it has done, or if it is having any kind of impact at all. And the goal, obviously, is to continue finding and addressing any of these issues. And the reason that I'm talking to this a little bit more directly now is because I'm part of the team that's doing the strike force for it to determine what really needs to get addressed yet, and we're going through this on a weekly basis to inform more people so that we can actually have more open discussions about it. I didn't mention that in my last stream. So the question is that I mentioned in your last stream that I felt the tier 2 raid was a little overtuned. Is there any work in progress to hash out the difficulty in tiers? That was on Bloodborne's stream the other night. Yeah, we aren't doing anything right now directly to change the difficulties on Tier 1 and Tier 2 and Tier 3. The focus has been more on Tier 4 and Tier 5 to make sure that they're ready to go out the door. The mechanics that are added in Tier 4 and Tier 5 do alter the way that the initial fight, second fight, and third fight all play out. So we needed to make sure that those were done, that the new mechanics that are introduced are rather obvious, that they're doing what we expect them to do, and that has taken precedence. By the time that we get to U40, or even the next release, maybe that gets us to the Tier 5 release, there might be some opportunities in there to make adjustments to the Tier 1 and Tier 2 experiences. Tier 3 is going to stay right where it is. Tier 2 is actually not in as bad a spot as I think that Tier 1 is. Tier 1, I think that the first two fights are not that bad. I think that the third fight is a little overtuned. So the question is, this is, I believe, to the server pinning that we're doing. Would it increase the performance for both that area that's moved and the rest of the game, or just one? So the hope is that because of the nature of the work that's been done, that this would address the game on the whole, and also those particularly non-performant areas. So it should help both. So that's an opinion. That's great. If and when there's 64-bit servers rolling out, someone in the other games fan Discord said we'll get them before the other game. Is it true? Or is it? Yeah. So the testing. This is an interesting one. So 64-bit servers are still being worked on. We're actually getting closer and closer to being able to test them. The difference between the architecture for Lotro and DDO, we don't really spend a lot of time talking about DDO, obviously on this stream, but the difference in architecture doesn't necessarily mean that we can do the same thing that EverQuest did from the Dark Paw side, because we have to be a little bit more careful about the way things work on both of our games, and the testing is going to be different, so the timing will be different. And I apologize, my boiler keeps kicking on because it's kind of cold up here in Mass today. But the intent is to get that out as close to the same time as possible, and we do think that the 64-bit server, once it actually does get implemented, will have a positive impact on the overall latency of the game and lag that we see in the game, because it will give us a little bit more cycles on the server side to handle things. And we are continuing to work on other areas that we can identify to try to alleviate some of this. It's been probably one of the biggest efforts that we've been doing over the past several months at this point from the engineering side. Are there any plans of making Virtues account wide? New to the game, just leveled to 60 on my Bjorning, but looked at the alts and kind of dread the thought of giving Virtues to them already. We know Virtues is continuing to be another one of those areas, kind of like allies. We have to do the stepping stone approach, and we are. The stepping stones that we're working on, as I just stated earlier, is looking at how we can actually make the game a little bit more friendly to newer players and make it so that elder players can actually help and guide along those newer players. So that's step one. Step two will be looking at some of the rather long-tail alt grind issues that we currently hear a lot from you as players. So we're looking at it. That it is being looked at. If we go down in level, how would that work with level locked abilities? Well, that's still an open question too, right? So we're in the early stages of this to see exactly how this would work. So it could potentially be that if a skill is level locked, you don't have access to it. The good news is that a lot of the game is already set up to allow for skills to downscale to, a level 1 experience, because everything is built off of the progressions that we have inside of the game. So it gives us a little leeway to be able to take care of that. A lot of this will clearly need to be tested. We'll have to validate that players are not too overpowered, that the skill sets that they have available to them do scale correctly. So there will be some pretty hefty testing that has to go into it. And we'll see exactly what that does for level locked abilities, or level abilities that are actually unlocked by having more trade points, so on and so forth, as we get closer to that. Ultimately, I don't think that we're going to do anything that will block skills from being active, if we can avoid that, because you probably have grown accustomed to using those skills. It's just that they would be far less effective at lower levels. how would you downscale a level cap character? Well, this is a really hard question, right? Because we haven't actually determined everything. But how would we downscale a level cap character to a level that doesn't use LIs, or LIs that have much fewer traceries available? Would the content be as challenging for downscaled players, or for the not downscaled one? It would be a lot better than it is now. We still have open questions on how we're going to handle all of that. So it could be that the progressions that we build out will go down to a 0 value at some level, but we don't know. We don't know exactly how that's going to happen yet. We just know that we're looking at it to see if this is something that is viable and that we can execute on to make it better for elder players to assist newer players. So there are some questions that are still very much outstanding that we do have to continue to look into before we are really set to explain everything that's going on with this. When we get closer to where we really feel that we can move ahead on this, then we'll discuss it in greater detail. Forgive this mostly casual question, given there's a lot of important stuff to answer, but you teased something about living in Middle-earth on Bloodborne Stream. Would that have anything to do with open world housing? Would anything like that ever be possible in Lotro? So, I'm going to make the wild assumption that by open world housing, you're kind of alluding to the way that Star Wars Galaxies, yes, I'm old enough to remember Star Wars Galaxies, how they handled their open world housing, and you were able to pretty much put a house down anywhere in the world. We're not talking about that. That's not what I'm really talking about at all. I'm keeping a lot of the details very close to the vest because there's no way that I can promise this. There's no way that I can really go into great details on this because it is a long-term goal. It is not something that is going to happen in any way, shape, or form in the near future. It's something for an appreciable amount of time from now. But it is something that I believe would focus more on the casual player who enjoys Middle-earth for the sake of Middle-earth and who would like to spend their time in Middle-earth. So I have a theory on the way that our player base is actually broken out. We have our high-end players who are really into the raids and into the instances and into the gear sets and everything else that we offer as a game. We have the people who are here just for the story and just to experience the story that we're telling. And we have a core of players who are really interested in living in Middle-earth. They may spend the majority of their time right now setting up their house, setting up the way that it looks, and their experiences are not necessarily the type where they're going out and trying to achieve anything beyond minor deeds or just seeing the sites that are available. Getting those cohorts and contingents together and getting them to interact with one another is kind of what the goal of living in Middle-earth is all about. And that's about all I can say on it until we start to get closer to it and we start to we start to get ready to peel the layers of that onion back, right? Because there's a lot that needs to go into it before we can really get there. There are stepping stones that have to be applied, and we have to make sure that a lot of that tech is available, and it would be a complete departure from what most MMOs do. So we're looking at it. It's something that is way off in the distance, something that is a pie in the sky dream of mine that I really would like to see come to fruition someday. But I wouldn't say that it's anywhere in the next year, two, maybe. We'll see. Can we get Desperate Flight as a group escape? Oh, come on. Really? Desperate Flight is already, like... Probably not. I'll say probably not. How's that? Let's see. Tier 5. 2 weeks after Tier 4 then. Potentially. We're not going out right now and saying exactly what the timing will be. We want to make sure that everything's baked and cooked and ready before it actually goes out. The goal is to make sure that Tier 4 and Tier 5 are in the state that they need to be before they're actually released. Class balance seems to be somewhat skewed at the moment. Can we expect a number balance soon? Not talking about class overhauls, but rather getting numbers across classes closer. So it's a really good question that you're asking, because we actually just had a discussion on that. Classes will always be getting adjustments as we move through the game, and in U40 there are some minor adjustments that are being made. That'll be the next release. And the raid usually, when a new raid or instance tier comes out, it usually does inform a lot of the decisions that need to be made around where classes have ended up. So part of this is seeing some of the feedback and some of the actual details that come in, and the data that actually is generated from people playing through the new in-game content. It's a lot easier, obviously, to maintain the things in the past because we know what those are, and the new stuff is where we need to actually spend some more of that time. When will hunters get buffed? We are planning on U41, update 41, which would be our third quarter this year, to be the timeline that we're looking at for any of the larger changes to classes. Hunters may be in there. They likely will be in there, but as I stated on Bloodborne stream the other night, we're probably not going to do a massive overhaul in 8 classes this year. We're probably going to do something more of a targeted and nuanced change to the different classes to enhance them, but not necessarily completely change the way that they are. That does not mean, however, that we wouldn't focus on potentially changing out a section of the tree. For like Hunter, it would potentially be yellow being folded into red and blue, and becoming more of a generic, not generic, but more of a support line rather than a full line on its own. I'm not saying that that's exactly what's happening because we don't know yet. We haven't solidified those plans at this point. They're only in the formative states. So we will know more when we get closer to the actual release, and we'll let you know then. Is spending more time on the housing system and updating the hook system something the team considers doing? We love the housing system. Myself and Scenario are probably the two biggest advocates of the housing system. And that is part of living in Middle-earth, right? So are there changes to the way that we do hooks and the way that you can position items inside of the home? Not right now. But the housing system is something that we always look at. When raiding, some subset of servers are close to unplayable while others are fine. Yes, that's why we're working on the pinning. That is one of the things that the Aurora changes that we have currently up in testing are meant to address. No, we're not putting in snipe hunting. How is it going with tracking multiple nodes for crafting? Oh, man. I hope some of you got a laugh out of that. So, tracking multiple nodes for crafting. So, things that should be easy sometimes are incredibly difficult. This is one of those times when the thing that should be very easy is incredibly difficult because of the way that it was set up years ago. And the way to undo it, or to fix it so that we can do this, is potentially more difficult and costly and invasive than we really have the appetite for. I'm not done looking at it, but I'm getting closer and closer to throwing in the towel because it is becoming very cumbersome to discover that the next layer down has another speed bump that's going to stop me from being able to do it, right? So I'm still hoping that I can make that happen, but it's starting to look further and further away from being possible, sadly. Any word on when we might see the new Prospector event? So, not any time in the very near future. The Forester event has proven to be a little more exploitable than I had expected, and I might need to rethink being able to do a lot of this stuff on a lot of the crafting events directly on landscape. So it's not backburnered, but it's just not something that's front of mind right now. Although I've seen some of the rewards that the art team is making, and they're gorgeous. If server pinning works, then there's the applications for it across the game is something that we will certainly look into and see where they fit the best. If we don't have enough raiders for Umbar content, as well as 6-man content, okay, that's just a statement. I don't really know if there was a question there. All right, let's see. Let's get down to the next questions. If there isn't a sly UB40 joke hidden in the U40 spaces, you'll be disappointed. You'll probably be disappointed. I'm just going to say, you'll probably be disappointed. Skirmishes. So, since I alluded to it during the stream with Bloodborne, if you're not going to overhaul skirmishes altogether, could we at least get new rewards for older skirmishes to make them worth running? The problem with adding new rewards to older skirmishes is that so many players at this point have marks aplenty. And being able to put in rewards for something like that would just mean that you'd be able to get the rewards without really doing anything. So I'm not saying no. I'm saying that if we ever get around to revising and looking at skirmishes, because skirmishes, there are a lot of different parts of the game that we think could use a refresh or use an update. I mean, featured instances are out there. Going back and actually retrofitting some of the older instances that are beloved and getting those to work on a scaling is just another. There's a myriad of things that we would love to do. As I said on Bloodborne stream, I wish I could print time, not money, because time is the thing that is the most restrictive for me, and I think for the team at large, is that we just don't have enough time to do everything we want to do. If we had the time to do everything we would want to do, we'd be meeting a lot of the different desires that that you have as players, and we want to continue to meet as many as we can. It's just that we have to find the time to do a lot of them. So it's a matter of time. It's a matter of where it fits on the overall scale of things that need to be done or that we want to have done. So I can't say that skirmishes won't get touched in the future. I just think that they're not the highest priority at this point in time. There's a question about carryalls too, and I need to I need to validate something because I'm pretty sure we're working on the carryall rename. And I'm going to do this real time, real live right now. Because I know that we're working on something there. It's just a matter of when it's coming. So I'll see if I get a response. Let's see. Can we get carryalls for outfits? It's money in the bank for you guys. That's what the wardrobe system is meant to do, though. So I'm not certain what you mean by that. If you can clarify it a little bit more, maybe I can help, but I don't know. I mean, if it's just for cosmetics, yeah, I mean, we could potentially make a cosmetic carryall if it was necessary and if it was desired. I don't see why we couldn't. Sure, I can put that on the list of things we can look at getting done at some point in the near future. Will everything roll out at the same time in regards to OS's 64-bit, new OS and everything else along those lines? If all that stuff is coming in 2026, I think we're really hoping that we have our 64-bit up and running well before then. We're working on it. Are we allowed to choose not to downscale? Yeah, I mean, that was how I opened everything. The downscaling, if we do it, is meant to be optional. It's not something that you'll be forced to do. It's something that we want to make sure you have the option to do. We want you as players to continue to have the agency over how your characters are played and used. Any chance that we can get a barter option set piece for the Umbar instances? We'll talk about that. I've seen that come up in the forums a few times, and I would like to actually discuss it with the team and see exactly how difficult it would be. Orion, any opinions on removing or balancing short cooldown immediate skill status like Minstrel Piercing Cry? I don't think it's a very good rotation loop when every 2 seconds you use an immediate skill to cut your animations. Okay. This is a really loaded discussion point. It also shows that you understand a little more about the nuances of the combat system than maybe everybody does, right? So our more casual players, those who spend most of their time on landscape and don't go into instances or really participate in the high-end instances or high-end raids, and who are more content to just play the game at the pace that they want to, don't necessarily know about the animation cutting. They don't necessarily know that the immediate skills can do that. They don't necessarily know that they can chain together a whole bunch of skills in ways that kind of break the experience for what we're designing initially. However, there is a group, I should say a group, there is a contingent of players or a cohort of players that look at this as being the epitome or the apex of knowing the game inside and out. So removing that would do some harm to that contingent. And it's something that we talk about. Most specifically, we talk about it and how it impacts the Ettenmoors. And it might be why we've leaned away from a lot more immediate skills and moved into more of the fast skills in some of our revisions and some of our revamps. But the immediate skills that exist are there for particular reasons, and we're not going to necessarily get rid of them. We don't want to change the way that people have been playing the game for years without a valid reason or a way to actually put that feeling back in. So there's no plan at this time to change the way that those work. If you choose to do it, you can, and it does give you a slight advantage in combat. But it's not something that you have to do in order to play your class correctly or well. All right, let's see. Does SSG have any projects in the works beyond LOTRO and DDO? If we did, I wouldn't be able to talk about them on the stream. Will there be a special reward system to encourage players to downscale and help others like not so popular, like the not so popular as it seems reflecting pools? Reflecting pools aren't popular? I didn't know that. So, will we incentivize it? The answer is yes. We have plans to incentivize it. We're definitely looking to incentivize the way that you downscale. And we're going to be cautious about it. We're not going to talk about it right now. But it would be something that we definitely want to look into and make sure that we can adjust and then tie into the level downscaling when it goes live, if it goes live. How is it going with tracking? Oh, you already asked that one. Is there ever a plan to... Hey, Scenario. Is there ever a plan to have a server without levels? No. No, there's no plan for that at all. Last cap, Delvings were advertised as being an alternative gearing progression. That is true. Due to their release schedule, however, they didn't properly align with the raid gear at the time, making them mandatory for players who wish to acquire the best gear. This level cap has been largely addressed, but the drop rates and special crafting items seem abysmally low, and there's no way for players to acquire heraldic traces apart from grinding Delvings. Those were design decisions, and we're sticking with them for now. If it continues to be a problem or impacts parts of the game, then we can revise it. But at this point, that's where we're keeping them. That's how we put them in. The other rewards for heraldic pieces, I need to check. I can't recall off the top of my head where we have that earmarked, but I believe that there's other places for it. Have we considered a class testing ground? As a new player, I can read all I want about the class, but I wish I could just take them for a spin on a practice dummy or with all the skills or something from an early level to get an idea of how they play. No, we haven't really considered a class testing ground. Probably because we're free to play and it's easier for you to just kind of play for a bit. But at the same time, I can see where this would be beneficial. something I can look into. I don't necessarily know that it would be something that would ever climb up on the hey, we've got this much time charts, but we can certainly look at it, put it in there as a bullet at some point. All right, we'll keep moving. The front-facing aspects of the game. I don't know what that means. Oh, I see. So like the advertisements and changes that are being made. Yeah, that's not, again, not my bailiwick, so I don't really feel like I can actually comment on that with any kind of credibility at this point. Hey, so here's the update, real time on Carryalls. U40. I'm pretty sure that we're going to be looking to test that in Bull Roar's upcoming, but it is slated for U40 that you could rename your Carryalls. All right. Would it not be better to focus on older classes than release new ones? So, wow, I actually really enjoy Mariner. I think Mariner is a lot of fun. We're always going back and looking at classes. We always have discussions about our classes and how we can rework them, how we can revise them. I don't want to call it a problem because it's not a problem. The difficulty that we have, and some of what we've actually done to ourselves, is put ourselves in a position where it's more difficult for us to make meaningful changes to the classes without going through and making some really deep cuts or deep changes, right? So, I mean, you could look at the minstrel changes from last year. You can look at the Guardian changes. You can look at the Warden and the Bjorning and all of that and say that, yeah, we made some adjustments there. We made some rather large alterations. At the end of the day, though, you were still able to get most of the benefit that you had from the previous versions of the class. And we are likely to never make it too restrictive for you to keep the character as close to the way that you had it before. I'm saying that, and I completely changed the minstrel. God, it was like 12 years ago now, but still. The goal is to keep things as close to the gameplay that you're used to so that we don't really upset any of those apple carts as we move along. But there is always going to be a demand and appetite for something new. So that's why new classes are introduced every once in a while, and why we continue to build out some more of the flavor in the world. That doesn't mean that we won't ever go back and revisit the previous classes, because we certainly do go back and look at the other classes and make adjustments to them to make them feel a little bit more fresh, and we update them. And we are planning on updating some things over the course of this year, albeit in a more nuanced way, but we will still be making adjustments to them. Anyway, we're going to move the game to the cloud and play through it. No. Any news on Blue mini buffs specifically, or any changes like that? No, we don't have anything specific that we're ready to talk about yet. Could you implement the possibility to sell items to the trader like you do in another game by right-clicking on them in inventory? That'd be great. I'd love to be able to just sell all my junk at once too. So who knows? That's something that would be a great quality of life improvement. Again, it's a quality of life improvement, so it's not something that would be at the top of the radar in the beginning. Could we explain why transfers from closed worlds is so hard to implement? I can't. It's not my area of expertise. I just know that it's something that is not super easy for us to do. Could you guys ever make... Oh, well, okay, so Nanaris, you're being critical. It's different because of the nature of the actual code work compared to what the benefit is compared to the work that actually happens. So being able to track multiple nodes is very different than something that broadens the ability for people to play the game. It's not an equal thing to actually put up against one another. It is not. It's not like apples and oranges, but it's pretty close to apples and oranges. Anything about two-factor? I honestly don't recall where we were at with two-factor. I apologize. I can look into that, and if I can get information over to Cord for next week, maybe he can answer that for you. Any chance on increasing the dropping of resources to 5 or 10? Not sure what you mean by the dropping of resources to 5 or 10. I mean, if it's 5, if you mean like when you're out there harvesting nodes or something, I would need a little more context. Just add new currency. No, we can't just add new currency for skirmishes. It has to be, we have to be cognizant of things that have happened in the past. We would need to figure out a way that we can handle that a little bit better. And I know we have 1 billion cosmetics. Wow, this is a lot of chatter. That's great. All right, is there a chance for... There is. Yes, I already said that. That's good. Okay. Well, thank you for the positive feedback, River of Power. We love doing it. I mean, that's the thing. Creep Emo Collection is such a tease. Is the Warg Fire Breathing be released anytime soon? I can't say anything about that either. We haven't touched any of that in quite a bit. Let's see. So, accessibility. Oh, access to your soldier. Oh, not accessibility. Okay. That's something we talked about. I mean, we already do allow you to take the soldier out. I think the problem is the soldier loses its value after a time because it doesn't scale correctly, and we would need to adjust that before it becomes more of a thing. Is PvP between free people a possibility? No. End of statement. No. You can duel, and that's about it. If you want to do endgame and Lotro, what expansions do you need to purchase? I'll let the player base answer that. You would have to get the most recent one, obviously, and that's the Corsairs of Umbar. Hey, they did. Let's see. Please improve the graphics. That would be a huge overhaul. The graphics are still not terrible. I mean, when you really think about it and look at it. I can understand where, you know, the more realistic approach is not as appealing to all, but making a change like that would be a little bit difficult. And probably not something within the scope of what we're planning anytime in the near future. Okay, yeah, so the question did come back up about the resources. I don't think we're planning on making any changes to how many items you actually get from node resources. I am not going to answer that question, Feels Lahini. Not something I would ever comment on. Is adding more physics to the character outfits a consideration? For example, cloaks reacting to the wind. It would be a very large undertaking to do that, and I don't know what the value would be at the end. Is the Elf Avatar update still on track for Q3? We're still planning on it. Yes, we definitely are. Some of the stuff we do seems to go in the right direction, but then it seems you tend to release stuff but don't polish the remaining 30%. We have an 80-20. We go for 80-20. What are your processes to evaluate when a thing you work on is actually done? Good question. Most of the time we try to get it to the 80-20 for the polished state, so that 80% is like the go no go, and then if it's not completely polished, we would like to go back and revisit things. We do tend to go back and revisit everything we possibly can. The go no go on everything is really more dependent upon what the release requires and how the shape that things are in. Things that are not ready, we hold back. I mean, look at Siege last year. It was not ready. We held it back. I'm still working on it right now. So we don't put things out there if we know that they're terribly broken or they're not really ready at all. And if we discover things, because not everything goes out there where we expect it to be perfect, and then things get completely change when you put them on a live server with a whole bunch of different people hitting and hammering on them at the same time. So we make the adjustments as quickly as we can, and we try to address every bug that comes up. Right. Will there ever be another new real vanilla server? I can't really answer that question. I couldn't say no and I couldn't say yes because there are no current plans for that, right? So if something like that does come up, we would definitely let anyone know. Any news about the new Further Adventures? That's a U41 thing. We're not going to talk about that now. Okay, again, I can't answer questions about transferring off of the dark servers. Sorry. You're talking about the quiet servers for PvP. Okay, let me rephrase this then. So, Ethy, you asked a question. Will you please let us transfer off of quiet servers freely? I'm lucky to finish my PvP weekly these days. I don't think we would ever really do that. No, I don't know. I'm sorry. Hey, there was a question about the low FPS experiences in Umbar. I would extend that also to Minas Tirith. This is part of the effort that we are going through right now with the smaller team, a smaller group of the actual team, to identify some of the egregious places where we're seeing both client and server difficulties, and we're slowly working through them and identifying things that we can make adjustments to and address, because there are some areas of the game that are worse than others, and we are working on trying to fix a lot of those. Elf avatar changes that we are planning on is for all elves in the game. Sev has teased a new legendary server. Any news on that? We're definitely working on something, and I can't say exactly when, but we're working on it. Yes, we are working on it. We're not going to explain the gimmick yet. We're not going to explain what it is yet because it's not ready yet. Okay, can we please get a Baron statue? Can we travel skills to Rose Gabelle now that the map item has been changed to single use? I can look into that. Not exactly sure what the block would be for that. I'll have to ask. The Bjorning rework was like an 80-20. No, understood. Bjorning is going to get touched again at some point this year to try to make up anything else that's there. That's missing, I should say. No, so Talrion is asking whether or not future crafting events will be in some sort of instant spaces. Potentially. The objective with a lot of the crafting events that I'd hope to implement quickly was to make them more out in the open so that they felt more of like a community experience, more of like a world building experience. And the Forester one was like kind of just the first thing that I put out there as a posit. And the next ones will be more cooperative, I think, than competitive. That doesn't mean that they'll all be cooperative or competitive. It just means that the next ones will be a little bit different. Some will be instanced, most definitely, because they would need to be controlled. Others might be out in the open. Can we make Umshar the Glutton float in the water after she's defeated for group photos after the fight? Who says you killed it? It just slips down into the dark. All right. Are we going to tell anybody about the plans for PVMP later this summer? So, I would love to, right? I would love to give you the full skinny on everything that's going in that I'm planning on to get in. I don't want to overpromise, and I don't want to paint myself into a corner where if I can't get all of the work done in that time frame, that I've made an impossible situation for myself. There are some changes and adjustments that will definitely be made. Those don't necessarily seem like they're major, but when I say that, we do have to do some balancing out there for the monster play classes because they're a little bit behind in some regards. Not every class is that bad. So there'll be some class adjustments. There'll be some class trait adjustments. There'll be very likely new additions to the appearances because we've got some more appearances that are now available. There'll be a few other changes that will happen, and if everything goes well, then you'll be getting something that hasn't happened in a very long time in the Edinmores. So keep your fingers crossed for me. And when we get closer to the timeline that this is supposed to happen, we can definitely start talking about it a little more freely. It's just I don't want to overpromise on what I'm currently looking at. There's a lot of nuance that goes into what I'm working on, and I can't guarantee that it will be at the 80 mark when we get to that timeline. So I'd rather hold back on it to say that there are pieces that are already in place that have been worked on and will be easy to turn on. So that's not it doesn't mean that there's nothing coming. It just means that the biggest thing could be delayed until later. I don't know exactly when, but I'm hoping that I get everything into place, and so far it looks pretty good. I don't want to comment on the location of the new legendary server. Seb has alluded that it might be in Europe, but I don't want to say anything outside of what I really should be saying about the legendary server. That's more of a Seb decision than it is an Orion decision. When will the 64-bit servers arrive? I mentioned that a couple times, but I'll mention it again. We're close to being able to test those, and we're hoping that it happens much sooner than later. Yeah, Nanaris, I do want to keep the crafting events in the world, because I think that because crafting can be very social, that I want to keep things as most social as I can. Random question. Any ideas floating around for new festival events? Oh, yeah, definitely. Yes, definitely. The heroes in the tavern are concerned about Sarah Oakhart's general health. Oh, she's very slow moving, and we fear she may have been in a motorized wheelchair to help get around. Well, first off, there's no motorized wheelchairs in Middle-earth. We do have wheelchairs in Middle-earth. Sarah's fine. And I would advise, if you don't know all about Sarah, you should learn all about Sarah Oakhart and take your time on that quest. It's enlightening. Have mega servers entered the team discussion yet? They have not entered this chat, no. So glad to see the devs' communication with the community. What? We get knocked on not communicating a lot. I'm kidding. I love interacting with the community. I started off as a community rep, so that is probably why I enjoy doing this. Let's see. Hey, I caught up. Awesome. So, and it's just right at about time. Perfect. I just want to close with, we love what we do, and we really enjoy interacting with all of you, and we really enjoy the feedback that we get, right? So keep the feedback coming. Go to the forums, tell us what you're thinking, tell us what we could improve. Understand that we want to address everything and make the changes that are for the good of the game as quickly as we can. And we do the best we can. U39 was a real departure, I think, for a lot of what we had planned, and U40 is looking great. I'm very excited about where we're headed as a team. I'm very excited about what we're building, and I think that we are in a much better spot now, and we are actually getting a lot of really good previews of things to come. And I'm hoping that in the next time that I host this, or the next time I'm on with Cord, that I can give you a little bit more detail about the things that are coming up in the summer, more specifically in the summer. We could talk about the hobbies. We can talk about the monster play changes. We can talk about anything else that we are planning on. But until we actually get a little bit closer to a lot of these things, it's difficult for us to really give you direct details. So if it comes off a little vague sometimes, apologies, but that is kind of the way it needs to be. There was a question about, is the overall population going down? Nope. It's not necessarily going down or going up. It's not something we talk about, so I can't really say if we're up or down or where it is. I will say that what we are trying to do is make the game a little bit more accessible for people who are coming in for the first time by looking at this little downscaling thing. And that's kind of what we're looking at. All right. So with that, I think I'm going to pass the torch over to the next stream. And I want to thank you again for all tuning in for an hour and spending it with me. Have a great one. See you out there.